Imagine having the resources to hire some of the best writers in the world. Not only that, your father-in-law is the fucking creator of wrestling. Now some people are gonna say, oh man, wrestling used to exist before Vince McMahon as well. I don't give a fuck. Nobody really cared about wrestling before that, alright? Vince McMahon made wrestling what it is today, whether anybody likes it or not, okay? Oh, some people cared about wrestling before that as well. Well, no one cares. Vince McMahon created wrestling, and his son-in-law Triple H has no fucking idea how to even tell a story. Forget about telling a story on a wrestling canvas, which is different from any other form of storytelling, right? This is different, but forget about that. He doesn't even understand the very basics of how to tell a story. It's honestly unbelievable, man. The very basic of storytelling, in case anyone doesn't know, is that when an event occurs, it needs to have some sort of bearing on something else. That means that there has to be an impact of something that has happened that leads to then something else, right? And then these series of events lead to a climax. And that climax has to be good enough that it makes the entire story worth it. Now in wrestling, the climax will almost always, if not always, be a fight. Everything culminates to a fight, a face-off between the face and the heel, right? So we already know how it's gonna end. It's more about the journey in between how it's gonna end. The journey in between the start and the end, I mean. The point just establishes that you need to make sure everything that happens has some sort of bearing, right? If you have an event, like let's say Braun Breaker coming out at entry number 2, and then some guy just fucking appears out of nowhere and eliminates him off the Rumble, alright, okay. Now, this will only have some bearing, to be very honest, man. It will only have some bearing if this is not Seth Rollins. Because if it is Seth Rollins, what's the purpose, man? We already know Seth Rollins probably hates Braun Breaker right now. So what's established here, man? Nothing, quite frankly. The only thing that was established was that, Seth Rollins is potentially back. So what? He will be back eventually and it's gonna happen. The face-off is gonna happen. We already know that, right? So what difference does it make? If it was Austin Theory or something, that's a different story. It was probably not him, but you get the point, right? Now you're gonna say, oh, but he got eliminated from the Rumble. Yeah, okay. Well, if he was the Iron Man or something, that would have been okay too. Doesn't really make a difference. Actually, I think it would have been better than what actually happened, if you think about it. But anyway, the next thing that happens in this match is the fact that Roman Reigns wins the Royal Rumble. What bearing does that have on anything? Now you can argue that, oh man, now he has the opportunity to choose a champion. Okay, well, theoretically, yes, he does, but the thing is this, right? He was Roman Reigns. He can just have some sort of a random ass match, or not a match actually, a promo with CM Punk, and they can just establish that we're gonna fucking main event WrestleMania. There you go. All done. Why does he have to win the Rumble? Somebody like LA Knight, for example, he can't just go up to CM Punk and be like, oh man, I'm gonna main event WrestleMania with you. It's not gonna happen, right? So he needs to win the Rumble. And now every time there is a bearing of some nature through an event, doesn't mean it's a good idea. An example of this is the last year's Rumble. Jey Uso winning. Now that does have some sort of bearing on the overall story that they were trying to tell. But the story was complete shit. Does that make any sense? So it's not just about having some bearing, it needs to be a good decision as well in terms of storytelling. So overall, right now, we are at step 1. This guy doesn't even understand that the things you do, they have to have some sort of an impact. Something needs to change in the overall dynamic of the story or of the fucking world that you're building. Nothing changes, man. Nothing ever changes. What has changed about any wrestler's position on the card since last year's WrestleMania to now? Nothing, man. Everybody is exactly where they were last year at this time. Exactly where they were. And that's just unacceptable, man. Things need to change. Especially with the weekly show, things need to happen at a fast pace. Say what you want about Vince Russo, he is right about this. Things need to happen at a fast pace, okay? You cannot have a slow pace in this type of product, man. Alright, you just cannot do that. This is not an Oscar winning feature film that you're making where you can have a very slow pace and there's gonna be some deep meaning at the end. No, this is simple stuff, right? Guy A doesn't like Guy B for whatever the fuck reason, and they're gonna fight eventually, and you need to make sure it's engaging. They need to hire writers who understand this. Quite frankly, maybe they even have writers who do understand this, right? Because I don't see why they wouldn't, but they just don't care. Nobody cares. Everybody is just too complacent, and this needs to change, man.